Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mindset Breakthrough Show. Today, I'm thrilled to have Marcella Allison as a guest. She's a super badass copywriter, was at like the highest levels of badass copywriting-ery, and then went on to found the Mentorist Collective, which is all about helping women business owners get connections and build successful businesses. I've met Marcella a couple times at events, and she's just freaking delightful to be around. So I'm super pumped that you were able to join. So thank you for coming, Marcella.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I loved your prompt on Facebook. I thought it was a very interesting question. So I love
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Well, yeah. So you said, so you, yeah, put the prompt on Facebook being like, "Hey, share your therapy and coaching breakthroughs, people. Let's do a show." And you were like, "I got one that rearranged every cell in my body." So if you want to tell us that story, and I'll jump in every now and then with questions as they pop up. But yeah, like kind of what was leading up to it, and like what was this rearranging cellular breakthrough that you
Yeah,
had?
sure. So this was a conversation I had with the spiritual director of Nobbs Haven Retreat Center in Loretto, Kentucky. Her name is Joanne Gates, and she has saved my life on more than one occasion. So the breakthrough I was talking about in my post started when I have a son who suffers from mental illness and addiction. And that's just a complete cluster, you know what, of drama. And the systems are broken. Like broken isn't even the word, right? So, at the time, I had been dealing with rehab centers and dealing with mental health, long-term care, mental health facilities. And they would claim to be dual diagnosis, meaning that they could handle both, and then they couldn't, right? Insurance is like paying for this and not that, and changing their mind. And everybody's worst nightmare of dealing with the mental health care system that is such a joy in the United States. And the recovery community. And I'm part of it, and there are wonderful parts of it, but there's also tons of scammers, and everyone promises the moon and they can't deliver. Like, I could go on and on.
Even like
So
within the system of like, I guess like credible places, like still like scams going on, or is it like kind of?
so the challenge is people wanted to say they were dual diagnosis, and up until a few years ago these two entities were completely separate, right? So you had mental health facilities and you had recovery facilities, but if
Sure.
you had a child who was a double winner, you had very few choices. And
Okay.
what would happen is a traditional mental health facility would say, yes, 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 we're dual diagnosis. And that meant they had an AA meeting on Thursday night. And you would have a recovery community, and they would say center, right? For profit. And they would say, or not for profit, the same. And they would say, yes, 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 we're dual diagnosis. And that meant they had like a doc in the box who would show up and hand out meds on Monday morning.
Okay. Yeah.
That ain't dual diagnosis by any stretch of the imagination. So during this time, I find this facility that shall not be named in St. Louis, I believe. And they're promising the moon. They're like, we're dual diagnosis. Not only that, but we've got this whole path. Your child, person, young adult, whatever, is going to stay with us, and then they're going to move from here to a step down house, and we're going to get them a job, and we're going to make them a productive member of society. It's like every parent's dream when you're in this, right? They're like, we're going to save your child, is basically what they're promising. So I hire someone to literally travel with him to St. Louis. I spend a ton of money to get him into this facility because insurance won't pay for most of this, right?
Yeah.
It's just not designed that way. And the choices are very limited. So this is probably 5 years into an 11-year journey, right? So we're spending a ton of money. We're trying anything and everything. So I send him off to this wonderful place, according to the internet and its brochure, right, in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, I can just breathe for 2 minutes. So I'm completely burned out. I'm exhausted. I've been trying to save the world, save my son. I drive down to Knobs Haven, which is a beautiful retreat center on the campus of the Sisters of Loretto in Loretto, Kentucky. And Joanne has been an amazing friend and a wonderful spiritual counselor and guide. And I said, I need a break, right? I need to come. I need to rest. I need some time just to myself to recover. So it's like 3 hours from here. I get in my car, I drive down, I get there. The rooms are beautiful. Like there's beds and quilts and the property is lovely. And there's paths and trees. And I'm sure you heard about it, right? From the Angie and everyone who was there when you just got together. So I unpack in my room. I have barely taken a breath. And my cell phone goes off and I answer it. And it's this girl who sounds like she's about 6. And she says, is this Miss Allison? Is this Miss Allison? And I'm like, yes. And she says, well, this is Tiffany. And I'm at the facility in St. Louis. And she names the name, which I shall not do to protect the guilty. Literally, my son has been there, mind you, less than a week. It's probably 4 days at this point. We're going to shut down because there's more money in detox. And your son, we're going to close. I feel like this was a Wednesday and they were closing on Friday. And you'll need to send him home. And I'm thinking, I have not only paid the facility, I have paid a person to transport him. I have paid 2 plane tickets, right? And I was just like, you mean to tell me you didn't freaking know this, right?
Yeah.
Was gonna happen 2 weeks ago when and the thing is, Brian, you feel so powerless and you feel this rage against the system, right? And it's not just one moment of rage. It's every time insurance has turned you down, every time some idiot can't find the right medication. I mean, like the absurdity. I used to say, if you weren't insane, the mental health care system will drive you insane. Like it's that, it's like a rabbit hole like you've never been down before. Oof. So at that point, I just lose my mind. I throw my cell phone against the wall as hard as I can. And it shatters, and I go storming over to Joanne's office, and I'm pounding on the door, and she opens the door, and I come in, and Joanne is this just beautiful, centered, calm energy. You know, it's in this beautiful building built in the 1800s. There's huge windows, plants, chair, little sage sticks, and candles. Images of Mary from all over the world and all kinds of icons, you know, from every tradition. It's just this beautiful space. And I walk in and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, I can't effing do this anymore. I cannot effing do this anymore. And I just lose my mind. And Joanne's like, come in, sit down. She lights the candle, right? Let's have a breath, right? And I'm like, ah! And she's like, so tell me what's been going on, right?
Yeah.
So I tell her the story of that phone call, but it is also the story of the 17 different facilities we've been in before that, all the money that I've paid, all the craziness of trying to find a therapist who can deal with like everything, right? Everything we've been through. And I'm just so exhausted and so tired of beating my head against this brick wall that I said to her, when I'm saying I can't do this anymore, I'm literally like ready to jump off a bridge. I am like, I cannot do this anymore. And she sits with me and she says in this really calm voice, then don't. And I say, you don't understand. Like, I'm the only thing keeping this kid alive. If I don't do this, if I don't pick him up, if I don't make sure he gets his meds, he's going to go. Like, I'm like, he's going to be dead, is basically what I'm saying. You
Yeah.
don't get it. If I don't keep going, he's going to be dead. And she just keeps saying in this really calm, steady voice, then don't, then don't. And I leave, and we never really, I just sit with it, right? But I'm arguing with her. I'm telling her all the reasons why I can't stop. And I get in my car and I'm driving back. I have to go back to my room. I have to pack everything up. I have to figure out how I'm going to buy a plane ticket. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with him when he comes home, because he's been living with us and our whole house is now doubling as a psych ward and a rehab center. And I'm trying to run a business, and I'm driving home and I keep hearing her voice in my head. And I'm on the Bluegrass Parkway and I'm looking at, it's beautiful, by the way, the Bluegrass Parkway. And I'm looking at the berm and I am thinking, I could just let my car go off. I could just go through that guardrail, go down into the hills of Kentucky, probably wouldn't even find the car for several months, right? And it wasn't that I wanted to commit suicide. It was that I literally could not get up and do this one more morning.
Yeah.
I could not do it one more morning. I said to a friend of mine once, in that moment, it was his life or mine. And God help me, I chose mine. So I kept hearing Joanne say, then don't, then don't. Every time I would say, I cannot do this anymore. And I'm cursing God and I'm losing my mind. So I got home and I said to my husband, I can't do this anymore. And he said, I can't either. And so what we ended up doing is we went to Goodwill. We spent maybe $200. We bought a couch, a chair, some bedding, some dishes, secondhand silver. We went to a tiny apartment, and we were lucky that we had enough money. We rented a small apartment in the university community here, one room. We put all the stuff in the apartment. We picked him up at the airport and we said, you can't live with us. We can't do this anymore. We took him directly to the apartment. He didn't even come home. We took him to the apartment and we said, here's the thing. If you stay sober, if you take your medication, we'll continue to pay the rent for this apartment until you can get back on your feet. If you don't, we'll stop paying the rent and, you'll be homeless. It's up to you, but we can't do this anymore. And we came home and I just went to bed. It wasn't even that I was paranoid. I was, or worried. I was so exhausted. I just drank a glass of wine and I went to bed. And when the phone rang the next morning, I figured it was either going to be the cops telling me they had found the body or my son. And in fact, I had talked to my Al-Anon sponsor the night before and said, if we have to go back to the apartment to get the body, will you go with me? And she's like, yeah. And I went to bed and I thought, I can't do any more. I have done everything I can do. And it really was his life or mine. And it's really hard. And I'm not discounting what it's like to be a dad. But as a mother, we have this myth and this story we tell that mothers are supposed to do. We're supposed to bring the child out of the burning building. We're supposed to lift the car off the body. We're supposed to dive in the ocean and save the child. We are supposed to sacrifice ourselves for our children. That's the definition of a good mother. And I was doing the opposite of that. I was sacrificing my child for my life, right? And it's hard for any mother, but it was, I think for women especially, that is the women that I mentor and that I coach, especially around addiction and mental illness. That's so much guilt and shame over saying, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And when the phone rang and I answered it, it was my son. And he was like, hey, how's it going, Mom? I'm up. I had breakfast. I'm going to go to my AA meeting. I took my Haldol, whatever. And I am like, who are you and what have you done with my child? And that moment of my saying, I can't do this anymore, I'm choosing my life, could have gone either way. And I am really clear and respectful because I know there are mothers who have lost children to mental illness and addiction. So when I say that that became a turning point that changed my life and my son's life, who is doing amazing right now, I acknowledge it could have been the police calling me. And I don't know what I would be saying to you now if that had been the outcome. I don't know, right? I'll never know because that wasn't the outcome. So what happens is there were still many years of 6 more to be exact of us working through this, but that point becomes this changing point. And he doesn't remember this, but he said to me once during the process afterwards, when you did that, I didn't have to be responsible for your life anymore. I didn't have to feel guilty that I had ruined your life. I could just take care of my own life.
Wow.
It was really powerful. And for me, it meant saying to be a good mother doesn't mean I have to sacrifice my life for my child. Now, I still struggle with that a lot.
Mhm.
And I struggle with the guilt of that a lot, of making that choice. But when Joanne said, then don't, it was the first time that someone told me there was another choice.
Mhm.
In my mind, there was no choice except a mother sacrifices herself for her children.
Yeah.
And how many times do we say, I can't do this anymore because you feel trapped, you feel overwhelmed? It was just that voice, her saying to me, then don't. In other words, you might not like this, but you are choosing this. In some form, you are choosing to sacrifice yourself every day. You are choosing, and I will say this to mothers who are at that breaking point, whether they can hear it or not, and their decision is their decision, and their journeys are their journeys. But I will use that phrase, then don't, when they say, but I have to let him live with me or else he'll be homeless, but I have to, pay for this or this. And it's tricky because in the recovery community, we call it detaching with love. And there is this idea, which is borne out over and over, that as long as you're enabling someone, they cannot accept responsibility and get better. When you mix that with mental illness, where someone is not in their own right mind, there's a much trickier choice to make. And it's much more difficult, right?
Yeah.
It's not as clear cut. And even addiction is not as clear cut, right? And so that's why I say, I get that my saying no, then don't, could have had a worse ending. But in that moment, I truly felt like I either had to end my own life or step away. I literally could not mentally, physically, emotionally do it one more day.
Yeah.
I could not.
So was then don't, I mean, it sounds like, was that kind of like the moment you realized it was a choice? Like before it was just like, I have to, like, this is just what we do. And then, so that's like the step back of like, I have a choice here. I've been choosing to do it this way all this time, and I can choose to do it the other way.
And to even acknowledge that you have a choice is huge, right? Because we feel like, no, this is what a good mother does.
Yeah.
And if you don't do this, you are abandoning your children and you are a bad mother and a bad human being.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a single guy with no kids, but I've been writing in the parenting market for quite some time. So just so much of the mom guilt of like, I have to do all these things with our kids. And that's actually like what my client does. I'll give him I was going to give him a shout out, but I don't know if actually, whatever. But yeah, so much of it is actually learning like, no, take care of yourself first. Believe it or not, this is going to help everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's hard and it goes against the culture to do that. And so the gift of her saying then don't allows me to say that to other women, however it bears out in their lives, to say, even I was talking to a woman the other day and I said, look, even if you're not going to choose it, that feeling of being trapped, of having no choices. Her son was out of control. She was thinking she had to let him back home. I said, I want you to make a list of all the choices you could make.
Mm.
You could open the door. You could say no. You could drop him at a rehab center. You could I'm like, just imagine every single choice you have here and make a list of it, even if you're still going to choose, right? And I have no judgment around this, right? Our son lived with us for 5 years. This is not like, we don't give advice. We don't say, don't let him back in. Like, it's just not how recovery works. But just that act of making a list of your choices makes you feel less trapped, even if you're going to choose to keep going. Right. Even if you're
Yeah,
going to
yeah, totally. Then it's less of like the victim-y, like I have to, like,
right.
knowing it's a choice just feels so much more empowering.
And the hard part is, in many situations, it is a life or death choice. So if someone says to me, he'll be dead if I don't discount that.
Yeah,
There was a very good chance that that would have been the outcome here. It
yeah,
wasn't. He began step by step. He's to get better. He's graduated from college now. He has a great job. He has a girlfriend. He has his own apartment. He's financially independent. Like, I didn't think any of that was possible.
yeah,
I didn't think he would be alive, let alone living that life right now. And I don't know where I would be if he had made the different choice. I just knew at that moment in time, I physically could not keep going. Emotionally, I couldn't do it. I
yeah,
couldn't do it one more day. And just the freedom of acknowledging I'm making a choice makes you not feel like a rat in a cage.
totally. And there's yes, has that impact then, like, than other areas like work? Or did that help start to see like where things were a
Yeah.
choice, or like
So
other parts of life?
yeah, so I just sold the Mentoress Collective, which we were
Yeah,
talking about a little bit before the call started. And what I realized, and this is nothing against the women who are still in the collective. I adore them and I loved that work. But what I realized I was doing was recreating the same pattern of exhausting and sacrificing myself and being convinced that I was the only one who could do this, that I had to keep going. And it was that recognition of going, oh my God, I've done it again, right? I've done it again. I just
these
replaced
sneaky
my son,
patterns, man, they just keep coming up.
right? Right. I'm like, I just replaced my son with 2,000 female entrepreneurs. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? And to be able to, and selling it was in a way another then don't. All right. Then stop sacrificing
Yeah,
yourself. Sell it to somebody else who's going to have a different. I mean, they totally get the mission. Mentor Cloud is amazing. They get the mission, but they have a very different financial plan and idea and structure for how to do this. And I don't have to carry it, right? Like
yeah,
that then don't became a different solution. And what's interesting is, just as with my son, when I said, I can't do this anymore, it opened the door for a totally different solution, one I had never imagined, in which he takes responsibility and begins to recover, and I begin to work on my own self. Same thing with the Mentoress Collective. I actually made the decision to shut it down. So I actually said, then don't. And we were having the closing ceremony when I got the offer for someone to buy it. So
oh,
same
so
thing.
you were already gonna
Oh
move on.
yeah, like we shut down the
Wow,
list, like everything shut down, which was fun to have to restart it, let me just say. But um
just kidding, everyone.
yes, yes. And someone said, oh, that was like a brilliant gimmick. I'm like, are you kidding me? I would rather have, I'm like, oh my God, no, I did not do this deliberately. This was exhausting. But it was the same thing. I had to say, I can't do this anymore and completely stop before the solution appeared.
Yeah. Okay. And Joanne, did she like was she like trained in any kind of like energy healing or therapy or anything like that? Or she's just like a rather evolved person, smart and good at
So
listening and all that
Joanne
kind of
is
stuff?
the spiritual director of the
Yeah.
retreat center. And I have sat with her in conversation for many years, well over a decade now. Um, she is not limited only to the Catholic tradition, even though the Sisters of Loretto is obviously a Catholic community. I would call it ecumenical or just spiritual, right? And so she meets you wherever you're at,
Cool.
right? If you show up as a Buddhist, if you show up Jewish, if you show up as an atheist, we've had retreats there. I have been part of retreats there for over 20 years, and they are such an amazing, welcoming community, but especially Joanne meets the women wherever they are.
Yeah.
Wherever they
Okay.
are. And she has this, she was so funny because I told her this story, and this is just so much about Joanne. Her reaction was to go, "Oh my God, who am I to say that to you? I can't even believe I did that." And I'm laughing. And I said, she goes, "Why didn't you just tell me to shut up?" I said, "Joanne, needed to hear," right? She's just laughing. She's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe." And I was like, that's what I needed. That's what I needed. But she's very humble and funny. And we
Yeah.
just, she is such an amazing resource for the retreatants there,
Yeah.
to be able to sit with her. And she had been holding space for me to come down. So she had seen this whole journey. It wasn't like I came in and that was the first session we had, right? Every time I would come down, we would sit together. And when things were so out of control at home, I literally could call her and say, "I need just 24 hours." And she would find, my line was, "Is there any room at the inn?" And even when the retreat center was full, she knew how bad things were. And she'd be like, "Okay, I found a cabin you can stay in for the night."
Aw.
Or the sisters on the second floor said, "It's okay if you stay with them tonight." Like, she would just find a way
Wow.
to give me peace, even if it was just for, so she was entering the story having seen everything from when Jake had his first break as a freshman in college, all the way to this point, which was probably 5 or 6 years in, and has continued with me all the way to now. I think it's 11 years since his first break, and seen the whole story. So she was able to say that from a place of love, having seen the cost I had been bearing, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing, Marcella. I got choked up for about 4 different times. So,
Thank
um,
you for inviting me to share it. I really
of
appreciate it.
course. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share before we go?
No, I'll just say, if anyone is in this situation and struggling, that you have my greatest empathy. Um, don't don't give up hope, right? Um, and your life matters. Your life matters too.
Heck yeah. Yeah, and I will give my client a shout out, Dana Abraham over at lemonlimeadventures.com. They do Calm the Chaos, and they're really focused on like helping parents of challenging kids, helping them like develop like deepen
Wow, I love
relationships.
it.
And yeah, like it's the stuff they're doing is incredible and very needed in the parenting market from what I've been seeing over the years. And it's really like
Right.
helping empower these kids that like the system has given up on, kind of a thing, and helping them, be successful. So there's that. And yeah, Marcella, if people watch this and they're like, "Oh my God, Marcella's the greatest, how do I get into her world?" What do they do? How do they find you?
Uh, so I'm in transition right now, but
Mm-hmm.
we do have my website, marcellaallison.com, has a way that you can still reach me for now, until I know what my next iteration is going to be. So you can just go to marcellaallison.com, or you can email me at marcellaallison.com for now.
Wonderful. Yeah, being in Marcella's world is a great place to be, everybody. So do that. And if you want to catch more Mindset Breakthrough shows, hop on the list at mccarthymindsetcoaching.com/join. You can get on my email list. I share stories from clients, the breakthroughs they've had. And then I've got more episodes like this with cool people coming up. So that'll be fun. All right. That's all for today. Goodbye, everybody.